crossroads. They're there for all of us. We may move along from day to day easily, walking in the sunshine, enjoying the view, feeling the peace. And then it comes, a crossroad, a choice point. There we stand, frozen to the spot. Which way now? Right? Left? Straight? What weights down each of these choices? Which way does our heart call us to go? Which makes sense? Which is God's way? The answers aren't easy. A crossroad can bring daunting spiritual pain, and it can bring us to our knees. It can even bring us to destruction. This morning, we have an expert on the crossroad. He saw a choice that changed his life. Please welcome Machus. Machus, the guard and servant for the high priest in Israel. Welcome, Machus. Welcome. It's good to have you here. We're delighted that you have come. Delighted. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm not an important person. I was never one to call attention to myself. I was a simple servant and guard in the service to the high priest. It was not a glamorous job. I got along. I did my job. I don't really deserve to be in the spotlight. The only thing I have to tell is how my life changed by a simple act of kindness.
You were an important character in the story of Jesus. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I remember seeing Jesus that night in the garden, but I had seen him before. I went with the Pharisees and other leaders many times when they questioned Jesus, when they were looking to find something to use against him.
How did you feel about that? About the way they approached Jesus?
I didn't mind at first. It was easy to go along with them to find Jesus. In a way, it was better than standing around in the council or slaving for the high priest at his house.
But your attitude changed.
I heard Jesus' answers. I saw how he dealt with people in need. It began to trouble me that the leaders were so dead set against him. I didn't see anything wrong with what he said, or did. I guess they thought it was some kind of threat. Certainly the word got around that his followers wanted to make him a king, to start a revolt, to kick out the Romans.
And how did you feel about that?
I certainly had no love for the Romans. They oppressed us, treated us like slaves. But I wasn't sure what would happen to my job if Jesus' followers were successful in putting him to some kind of throne. I wasn't sure how I felt about that.
And yet, you went with the religious leaders to arrest him there in the garden.
It was my job. What could I do? I had to go along. We were expecting trouble. We knew that at least some of his followers were armed. They were feeling threatened, and we were pretty sure they would resist.
Were you afraid?
Afraid? No. I was trained as a guard by the military. I knew how to protect myself. I knew how to strike with a sword if it came to that. I lived in that kind of world. In my world, you stood up for yourself. You struck back if you were assaulted. You struck first if you had the chance. I lived in a world where it was every man for himself. I knew Jesus. I heard him speak. But I thought when it came down to it, he and his followers would fight, and I was ready. And yet something happened that night that changed me. I expected one of Jesus' followers, I heard later it was Peter, lash out with his sword and cut my ear off. And I was ready to strike back. That's what I knew. That's how I lived.
And yet you stopped.
Jesus held up his hand. I thought he might call on the rest of his followers to strike, but his voice was quiet, gentle almost. I could not move. Jesus reached out his hand toward me, I thought he was going to grab me or hit me. Surely I would have in his place. But with great care, he simply touched my ear, and instantly I was healed.
And the touch changed you somehow?
He touched my ear, but in a more important way, he touched my spirit. He was one who had the power to strike back, to respond the way I was trained to respond. And yet, he chose to heal, to care, to love, if you will. Suddenly, I saw my life in a different way. It was like a light went on in my spirit. I saw someone live in a way that I could not understand.
Tell us about that light.
In an instant, I looked at my whole life. I saw each time I took advantage of another, struck another, hurt another person. I saw the struggle my life had been and the choices I had made to get ahead, at least as I saw it. And suddenly, it all seemed dark and empty. I saw a different way to live.
And how has it changed you?
I'm not much good as a guard anymore. I can't wield the sword in my hand or the hate in my heart anymore. I saw a way of compassion, of love, and I make different choices now.
And is your life easier now?
Easier? No. In some ways it's harder. But I find the face of Jesus in my eyes, when I am tempted to ignore the needs of others, to strike back when I am hurt, to get revenge when I am insulted or injured. I see the face of Jesus, and he calls me to make choice of compassion and mercy. I know this. In Jesus, I am forgiven that dark past and called to a new life. I know that Jesus went to the cross for me. He healed me by his death and his resurrection. But he did not only heal my ear, he healed my heart.
So let me ask this. What message would you leave for us?
I'm nobody important. I don't have a great speech to give you, but I know this. When we are tempted to live by the ways of the world, when we are tempted to live in the darkness, we can make a choice to follow the way lighted by Jesus, a light that comes from truth, that we are healed and whole in him. In him, we can dare to live in love. And that's the most important message.
As the apostle said in his letter to the Colossians, so then you must clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Be tolerant with one another and forgive one another. Whenever any of you has a complaint against anyone else, you must forgive one another, just as the Lord has forgiven you. And to all these qualities, add love, which binds all things together in perfect unity.
That's it. That's the life that is found in Jesus' touch. That's the life I pray for you.
And me for you. Thank you, Malchus. Thank you. Does everyone now know who Malchus is? Some of us call him Darrell Derbyshire, but he's for now on Malchus.